Could Tatsumaki, the Hero Association's trump card, stand against the Viltrumite's strongest warriors if one were to visit Earth's supercontinent? We'll find out today. This video will mostly be operating off the Amazon Prime version, but we'll use comic resources when necessary to clarify concrete story connotations or clear up any misunderstandings. Each matchup goes under the assumption that they've been causing mayhem and murder with the goal to seize Earth for Viltrum gain, so Tatsumaki has finally been deployed with both permission and intention to start twisting. Before that though, let's cover the number 2 rank S-Class hero. Overwhelming psychic power packed into a small body. Tatsumaki is widely believed to be the strongest S-Class hero on Earth, at least whenever Blast is off gallivanting through space. When able to completely focus her psychic output, Tatsumaki has proven her ability to impressively one-shot a being of a planetary power. This was shown when the complex rescue procedure using her psychokinesis was finalized, allowing her to direct her remaining energy solely towards Psychos Orochi, who was a mix of Psychos and the Monster King Orochi. Prior to this, Orochi had been calculated around small planetary via the prep of Gaia Cannon, which he brought forth all the way from the Earth's core to just beneath the surface for an attack against Saitama, which as I'm sure you can imagine didn't go well. As for Psychos, she was able to play ball with a limited Tatsumaki for a small amount of time and was also powerful enough to retain influence over the Monster King himself. Sairochi, being a fusion between both Orochi's physical power and Psychos' psychic ability, is narratively stronger than the two of them individually and with greater effect since the cosmic being known as God then granted their amalgamation a fraction of his power. So much so, in fact, that Sairochi even believed that this form would allow her to merge with the entire Earth itself and even defeat Saitama despite his easy victory over a small planetary scaled being, which further lends to the narrative indication of this transformation's ascendancy. Tatsumaki, tired and injured since she'd left herself weakened and open to attack in the process of ensuring other heroes didn't die during Sairochi's growth, not only face tanked a beam which could slice off a section of the planet, but she then one-shot Sairochi's grand form via twisting its entire mass along with the surrounding area itself. This earns her planetary to large planetary AP for being able to one-shot what should be a planetary foe after finally being able to go all out. Again, this is her getting serious after she was already wounded and fatigued due to spreading her powers thin, indicating that whether you think Sairochi is a small planetary or progressed planetary being, a fresh Tatsumaki is either large planetary or very comfortably planetary at the drop of a hat. That's a lot of psychic power you wouldn't want to have focused solely on you. An added note, some may attempt to say Sairochi's overall AP is multi-con or moon level via destruction, however that makes no sense to cap Sairochi's AP there, through that showing when Orochi is already small planetary alone and is even more powerful in this form, so mixed with dragon level Psychos and further empowered by God, only narratively evolves Sairochi above small planetary and not beneath. Even Genos states her energy was condensed, so this is a precision attack not even intended for wild scale destruction, and it still did that. Dragon Ball characters famously use condensed energy to do planetary or above attacks which don't even destroy the canyon they're fighting in, and while I don't use Dragon Ball system comparisons lightly, the proof of power and potency relation is applicable here for the character in question. It's literally like arguing Gogeta is less powerful than Vegeta because Vegeta has a more destructive looking attack earlier in the story, thus ignoring upscale in focused potency through controlled attacks. As for speed, Tatsumaki, by scaling above most other S-Class heroes as the most powerful behind Blast, leaves her comfortably at faster than light combat speed like multiple other S-Class heroes, some of whom have demonstrated surpassing light speed reactions as early as the G4 fight, like when Genos dodged lasers which were confirmed to have the properties of light, and again when battling Awakened Cockroach who stated he could dodge above the speed of light when inquiring if Genos had eye lasers which recognizes the connection between light and movement. This essentially stops faster than light combat in One Punch Man from being headcanon or fan calcs and provides it with stable combat speed scaling tied to the plot. By defeating Sairochi, she naturally surpasses Orochi who no-diffed FTL Awakened Cockroach before he could react for further evidence. Tatsumaki is also recognized in the material pretty evidently as the most powerful S-Class hero aside from Blast, so it's a no-brainer that even even someone as fast as Flashy Flash will not be able to utilize his speed to defeat her. This indicates the nature of her power set, and accompanying reaction time enables her to appropriately react in combat to such speedsters in a way which will see her emerge victorious. To clarify, it doesn't indicate she herself will zip around as fast as Flashy Flash can, but it proves her combat style allows her to deal with such speeds being used against her. All this leads to her being FDL to FDL plus in combat speed. So how does this play out against Viltrum's finest? To start, we'll talk about the likes of Nolan and Conquest. With these two, I can effectively cover every notable Viltrumite around and beneath their level, Amazon mark included. Using Nolan as the example for this higher class of Viltrumite, the most reasonable and accepted scaling for these characters when retaining mainline Invincible canon is between multi-continental to moon level. This comes primarily from the most famous feat where 3 Viltrumites flew from outer space toward planet Viltrum while Space Racer fired the Infinity Ray against it. The combined force of the Viltrumite's charge and the Infinity Ray more or less caused the destabilized planet to explode. Unless you're being disingenuous to the story, it's clear that one Viltrumite can't do planetary damage through a single attack, and especially not without a dedicated set of conditions like this feat here. This is why it's so difficult to reasonably give any Viltrumite planetary scaling within the confines of the actual narrative using feats or one-shot multipliers, since even feats like this with clear-cut connotations from the story are highly circumstantial attacks, rather than capabilities they can produce instantaneously, unlike Orochi or Sairochi. While Viltrumites are still very powerful, their dynamic durability scale makes this clear. Time and time again, we have seen higher level Viltrumites take notable damage from attacks far beneath this scale. It's narratively consistent that characters with some degree of super strength or super speed, such as Immortal or Red Rush, can bruise, bloody, and even cause the unconsciousness of high-level Viltrumites. However, at comparable levels of overall power is where Viltrumites are far more susceptible to damage. We've seen repeatedly how Viltrumites are torn apart, pierced, or cut when faced with brute force similar to their own. In short, Viltrumites may not last long against levels of force comparable to their own output, but can withstand much of it from lower scales, although they are still susceptible to said damage which can compound enough to become fatal. Aside from this, Viltrumites are particularly more vulnerable to internal damage. Their organs and interior body do not have even close to the same level of resistance as demonstrated by how Robot was able to kill a Viltrumite with a small bomb which detonated inside of him. To be clear, these observations are not headcanon or fan calcs, this is all consistent information clearly extracted and shown from the story. This leads to the conclusion that in regards to the likes of Conquest, Nolan, Mark, and any Viltrumite within or beneath their pay grade, Tatsumaki should be capable of completely decimating them in a single twist. She's not only proven that she's capable of one-shotting a monstrously larger being who possesses higher levels of power, but she's proven that she can perform these moves instantly. A huge difference between the likes of Viltrumites and Tatsumaki is their greatest feats require special conditions, plenty of build-up, and don't even come without risk to themselves despite it. Tatsumaki, on the other hand, can simply bend her wrists and apply enormous amounts of force upon you instantaneously. Viltrumites can't throw moon-level left jabs and right hooks, but Tatsumaki can twist you to her full scale on the spot. What makes matters worse is Tatsumaki's psychokinesis is essentially invisible, so unless you can conjure your own psychic barrier to assist yourself from her output, the S-Class hero can simply snatch you up without warning, then turn you into a stress toy as long as she can see you. Or not, actually, since she used telepathic waves to yoink Psychos through an underground labyrinth who was nearly an entire mile below, without having eyes on her. Overall, this spells doom for elite Viltrumites in multiple ways. Since canonically weak to internal attacks, Tatsumaki can twist Viltrumites into a contorted mess like she did to Sairochi, which would crush their internal structure and cripple their limbs. This bypasses their usual durability, and again, since she's an Esper, this isn't something they'd see coming or have experience in dodging conventionally. Secondly, even if you don't like that approach, Tatsumaki's raw power is enough to overcome their outer durability regardless. She scales to a higher level of AP than they do, deals damage on a cellular level, and has lifted comparable or heavier weight than any of them with no indication of it being near her maximum output. When you acknowledge this, along with how Viltrumites are rather squishy against similar or greater force, this means even without the internal weakness, their cells get torn to shreds by the sheer strength behind Tatsumaki's power. If Tatsumaki fatally twists someone like Conquest, one of two things will happen immediately. They will either be destroyed from the inside first, or completely obliterated from the outside, all from an attack they can't even see coming or know about until it's too late. This makes any high tier Viltrumite a low diff battle for the terrible tornado if she seeks to keep them alive, which may hinder some of her offense. Too likely a no diff battle if she wants to end them quickly, especially since Tatsumaki is known to eliminate threats to humanity without prejudice if she thinks of them as a noteworthy threat. If you're not convinced on the technical aspects of the fight, feel free to check the section at the end of the video where I'll clear up some other common misconceptions about a Tatsumaki versus Viltrumite matchup. Next is Thragg, and he is stronger than all the Viltrumites mentioned so far. Usual scalings tend to have him around moon level to even planetary depending on who you ask and what reasons they give. But again, following narrative indication, as he pretty much says himself, he's not capable of destroying a planet with a single attack. So similarly to Tatsumaki, he can be gotten to his scalings by easily defeating people who have shown greater destructiveness. The issue is, within Invincible's main story, those particular characters have their highest scalings through an attack which they can't replicate without certain conditions. So that's where Thragg's overall scale can truly become muddied. Regardless, whether you take the modest look at Thragg or the controversial highballs, he still loses to Tatsumaki for all of the reasons mentioned in the previous section that I'll avoid going over a second time. Thragg's greatest feats are things Tatsumaki can do far more easily, far more quickly, and the moment she lays eyes upon him through invisible attacks. Not only does she have reliably higher scaling, but she holds far easier win conditions. You have someone who can apply planetary force the moment she sees you from afar without build up against someone who needs to get close and only has proven anywhere near to small planetary scaling via an incredibly situational attack through other characters, and an attack which doesn't even represent their capabilities in traditional inverse combat. Ultimately, this is a no-brainer, and while Thragg is certainly stronger than Conquest or Nolan, the technicalities of this fight only means he more or less perishes the exact same way. Low or perhaps even mid diff if Tatsumaki wants to keep him alive, and no or low diff if she seeks to kill him off the jump given the opening intro scenario. Some pushback may be that Thragg's durability protects him, but this is handled by Tatsumaki's higher scale, as well as the fact that Thragg has actually been hurt by weaker Viltrumites in canon. People typically will say that a punch from Nolan had no effect on him, yet within that same issue, Nolan busts his nose with a headbutt, so, you know. Added, Thragg was also beaten up by 4 elite Viltrumites who should separately be just under Nolan's level, to the point where Thragg was at their mercy. So as strong as he appears, his durability is not so much higher than the other Viltrumites that it cannot be bypassed by individual elite strikes. If this were a video game, essentially Thragg gets 1 or 2 aura farming blocks per fight before he's reminded that he's not actually invincible. You may have noticed I've not mentioned combat speed for the referenced Viltrumites. It doesn't affect the outcome, but the explanation is a few minutes to break down, so I wanted to include it after as to not waste the time of those less interested. So let's get something straight about flight speed equaling combat speed within Invincible and how it functions differently from space within planets. It is generally accepted that Invincible characters can fly many times the speed of light in space where the conditions of zero resistance and minimal obstacles allow it. Some fans take this to mean that they can engage in hand-to-hand combat at this same speed on Earth, despite the series constantly and consistently showing this to not be the case. However, despite all of the narrative evidence proving they're not faster than light in combat, the argument remains, and the backbone of that claim has to do with a certain line of text within an official Invincible guidebook. That line is Alan's reflexes being enhanced in direct proportion to speeds attained while flying, which thus makes fans think Invincible characters can move at their interstellar travel speed during hand-to-hand combat. When speaking about Alan, who is more powerful than most Viltrumites, which is handy for me since it addresses anyone around his level or lower, this guidebook states this, which I'll put on screen for us to look at. In a planet's atmosphere, it takes him seconds, that's seconds plural, to reach Mach 10. If you are taking seconds to reach Mach 10 in flight, then you are not reaching light speed in the context of fighting, because it's taking you less than seconds to throw a strike. With Invincible characters' bread and butter combat speed ratings in scaling always coming down to their flight speed instead of their actual portrayed combat speed, that knocks the legs out from them being able to reach light speed in combat movements within gravity if they still take multiple seconds to reach Mach 10 with their flying movements, as close combat movements at this level require less than multiple seconds to perform. You can't claim flight speed equals combat speed but then decide you want to to ignore flight's acceleration within this process. Otherwise, it means you think every fight taking place on Earth involving standard characters and any Viltrumite, yes, any Viltrumite, even the whack ones since they can fly through space like that too, is a fight operating on a FTL or MTFL scale. And if that's the case, then good luck to you. Secondly, if Alan is not reaching lightspeed level movements in combat, then his reactions are not being enhanced to lightspeed in the first place, because as the handbook implies, he doesn't gain those reactions if he himself is not currently at that speed. So if he's not reaching lightspeed, then no lightspeed reactions. If he currently is at lightspeed, such as when he's zooming around in the emptiness of space, such as in some other characters' space fighting feats the fanbase heavily rely upon, then he might. Similar to how an Air Force pilot can control a fighter jet at high speeds above his own human reactions because of how this stuff works. Therefore, if Alan is only reaching Mach 10 in brief dynamic attack movements on Earth due to the acceleration limits of his verse, his combat reactions can only be enhanced in proportion to Mach 10. What you have to understand is this makes perfect sense in the story, which is what matters most, more than any fan calcs. Because Red Rush is massively hypersonic at best due to dodging Kursk's lightning. When he fought Nolan, Nolan had to anticipate Red Rush rather than match him for speed, which is clear evidence that characters like him cannot just zap into FTL speeds without enough acceleration. This is further evidenced by the countless times Viltrumites on Earth fail to do things as quickly as they should if their speed is all-encompassing, or how they get tagged by harmful attacks which are also nowhere near light speed, such as hits from Rexplode, the Mauler twins, the Immortal, Reaniman, Angstrom, and much more. Again, fan calcs can be very useful when supported by the story, but if they don't line up with the narrative, they're irrelevant since the creator isn't intending you to scrutinize every inch of their story with mathematics, which is why I only trust One Punch Man calcs backed up by narrative indication on the other side to be consistent. Some verses make it clear that travel speed and combat speed are not connected, and some connect the two. Invincible is the latter, which it demonstrates time and time again through acceleration or dynamic movement in combat, limiting their speed within the story, as opposed to when they want to fly somewhere in a straight line or through space, with said speeds varying on if they're on Earth or in space. This will take up too much time if I continue, but watching Invincible with an overall perspective inclusive of the story rather than through a plot ignoring microscope should make this clear. Some people will say this official guidebook isn't reliable in some areas, and to an extent I agree. Something like Red Rush running at 400 miles per hour is ridiculous, since we can see that that's not the case. However, the concept of needing to build up acceleration within planetary atmosphere is not ridiculous, and actually lines up with both the story and how the characters are portrayed in battle. Nolan's combat speed inferiority to Red Rush, Nolan not being able to catch Cecil, Nolan being hit by Immortal and even Reaniman, not to mention the countless mark losses or poor performances. These are all great instances showing how the need to accelerate enables them to be tagged and highlights how they can't speed blitz all their enemies for a legitimate reason. Ultimately, this puts high-level Viltrumite combat speed under Earth's gravity around hypersonic if you're being harsh, massively hypersonic when considering Red Rush, or maybe up to relativistic if you rely on fan calcs while ignoring canonical fight scenes. Thragg is a funny case because he is faster than Nolan, however when they fought, Nolan was able to tag him a whole bunch, so even though I would say Thragg is faster, it doesn't look like he's consistently that much faster for it to make a huge difference. For every panel where it looks like he's too fast for Nolan to react to, there's another of Nolan hitting him. So honestly, it just feels like another case of that good old Invincible inconsistency. However, even if you were to apply FTL to all of these characters for the sake of it, Tatsumaki still wins for all the reasons previously found in this video. Overall, across all reasonable scales, Tatsumaki is capable of defeating any single Viltrumite in combat courtesy of her superior attack potency, genius level of mastery, and mainly for being a disastrous matchup for any Viltrumite due to how she can obliterate them internally or externally from distance. I do appreciate admit there could be some genuine points regarding these matchups, so without trying to make this video too much longer, I'll do some quick debunks on some common points I've heard before. First, and probably my favorite one, is that a Viltrumite just needs to hit her once to win. The Sairochi beam, which sliced a section of the planet, was tanked directly by Tatsumaki's barrier in the process and only partially staggered her. This attack is comparable to the charge from outer space into Viltrum from Nolan, so even charging from outer space in a straight line and hitting a stationary Tatsumaki for their best attack would still not break her barrier, which isn't even an attack they would narratively do in a 1v1. Willpower resistance is another huge cope. People will use Garo adapting to telekinesis from a nonchalant Gyuro to suggest any old geezer with some willpower could do this. The whole story theme was Garo supernaturally adapting to all manner of things happening to him as he continued breaking through established limits. But even forgetting that, being able to move within Gyuro's powers is absolutely zero proof the same works for Tatsumaki. For one, Gyuro isn't even Psychos' max power, and for two, casual Gyuro is so far away from Tatsumaki's power that your argument is like saying because someone can power out of the Immortal's grip, then that also proves they can break out of Thragg's grip. The other side of this is Tatsumaki finding it difficult to lift Saitama, but this is actually a Tatsumaki feat. Saitama is anti-hacks and negates whatever it is you want to do to him to cause him harm, and yet Tatsumaki was actually able to affect his body by lifting it up from the floor, even to the point that it surprised him. Tatsumaki is literally moving a hacks ignoring character who has gag-like nature using her psychokinesis, which actually means if she's capable of moving Saitama with her hacks, then it will be a total violation to any Invincible character without gag elements or infinite strength. Also, it's Saitama. He's not a reliable frame of reference for boosting a completely unrelated character in a different series. He's not even actively resisting her powers or channeling willpower in this scene. He's literally just chilling. Finally, the other one is Fiora Ugly breaking from her psychic hold. This is very cut and dry. She was incredibly exhausted by this point and had even fainted already prior to this, all from the work she had done saving everyone, taking damage, and using her powers non-stop. So she essentially had such little stamina left by this stage that her abilities were operating on a deeply compromised scale, which is the only reason Ugly achieved this. Another thing some people may say is that Tatsumaki doesn't twist most people she fights, so they think she'll only throw debris at Viltrumites or something. When she fought 100 Eyes Octopus, she squeezed all the blood out from him. When she fought Evil Eye, she twisted him into a trash bag to humiliate him, then twisted him into near nothingness. She twisted Psychos while apprehending her alive, she twisted these monsters in the background without even looking at them, and as you know, she twisted Sairochi. The only time she doesn't go ham is when she wants to keep them alive or is going easy on them, and for anyone thinking Viltrumites can just brute force their way out of it, even forgetting about the scaling difference which already debunks that, Tatsumaki can literally apply her pressure upon individual aspects of their body. So you're basically pitting all of Tatsumaki's comparable or superior strength upon one part of their body. A Viltrumite isn't anywhere near as strong when a limb or vital point is solely pressured, or while having their body contorted, etc. Anyway, there's a lot more that could be said, but that about covers it. Tatsumaki defeats any Viltrumite in combat, and if you have a problem with that, she'll twist you. Hey, don't look at me, I can't help you. Like the video, subscribe, and put the notification bell on for the next video. Thanks guys.